Hi everybody, welcome back to the Astral Irma channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the Prime Directive. When people hear about the Prime Directive for the first time, they usually think of the show Star Trek, where it's presented as a universal and noble law. It's their highly ethical promise that advanced civilizations will not meddle with a lesser advanced world. And that's exactly how it's presented on the surface. It's a moral oath that they take and a cultural doctrine that claims to protect the natural development of any society that has not yet become interstellar. But then comes the part that most people skip, the part that turns the whole idea from a simple morality play into a political tool. Because the Prime Directive is also a cover for enforcement, suppression, and an active management of what the public is allowed to know. This is the problem I have with anything that suppresses the truth. I'm completely opposed to it. So you end up with something that says, we won't interfere, while also saying, if you learn of us, we'll make sure you don't know the real truth about us. The claimed intention is to protect what they call the sacred right of each sentient species to live through its own normal cultural evolution, without being pushed forward by superior knowledge, superior strength, or advanced technology that society cannot handle wisely. That part is easy to understand. Obviously, if you drop modern weapons into a medieval kingdom, you wouldn't be helping, you'd be rearranging the entire timeline of that culture and likely creating tyrants overnight. You know, if you handed a divided society technology that amplifies power, surveillance, and mind influence, you're not gifting progress. You're gifting domination. But this is exactly what the Federation has not only had a hand in, but has allowed by allowing certain extraterrestrial groups to work and make agreements with human governments in secret. Not to mention all the great resets that they have imposed upon humanity over millennia. So the Prime Directive is presented as a safeguard against irresponsible contact and against accidental contamination. That would be like leaving something behind, like a device, or showing technology that might become a new religion. The text in the oath of the Prime Directive goes further and makes it explicit that the Federation personnel may not violate the Prime Directive even to save their own lives or even to save their ship, unless they're correcting an earlier violation or accidental contamination. This is important because it establishes internal logic. If you create a problem, you're obligated to clean it up. And this is classic Andromedan karma belief systems. But you're not allowed to use the excuse of danger to justify breaking the rule for your own benefit. The Prime Directive also states that it's forbidden for extraterrestrials to communicate with humans using any device or tool that represents an improved upon science and technology already existence on that planet. In other words, contact is not just about whether you speak, it's about what you use to speak. That sounds technical, but it has major consequences. It's one of the reasons the Tigetans contact emphasizes using primitive Earth-based communication methods like Earth's internet, because the rule is as interpreted. You can only use what's already here, not what would constitute hard proof or a technological leap. So then the core text pushes it even more. It says it's forbidden to present proof that would demonstrate the existence of the Federation and its members, as I've already mentioned above, including technological machinery and gadgets of all kind, whether existing or future. So, the Prime Directive is not only non-interference in the sense of not uplifting a society, it's also non-disclosure in the sense of do not let us know they exist. Okay? And this is a really important part. The final piece, the one that makes people stop and stare, the text says that if rumors of their existence spreads among the people of that world, it should be quickly suppressed and covered up using any method at the disposal of Federation members. to preserve the natural progression of spiritual, cultural, and technological development. This is the main reason that the CIA was originally created. So read that slowly. Suppressed and covered up using any method at their disposal. Okay? That's not passive. That's not will avoid stepping on your lawn. That is active information management. So the Prime Directive becomes a double structure. One side is the stated moral principle, do not interfere with a naturally developed culture. Okay? The other side is the enforcement mechanism. Do not allow proof, do not allow open contact, and awareness, if awareness spreads, suppress it. That's why I warn so much about the benevolent fake alien invasion. Because if you see extraterrestrials land on Earth, that would be breaking the Prime Directive, and they're not allowed to do that. So if you see that happening, don't trust it. There's no way they're going to break the Prime Directive all of a sudden after thousands of years. Okay? They keep on doing great resets. Okay? In fact, they've sworn upon their lives that they won't do that. Okay? But we as humans have the technology to fake an alien invasion. Okay? We have the beings, we have the craft, and, that's on the agenda for the cabal. The next step to challenge the clean story by pointing out the contradiction with Earth itself. In my view about how the Federation views Earth, my argument is that Earth is not some isolated developing planet left alone in a protected bubble. I describe it as a world under control and direction, meaning that invoking the Prime Directive as an excuse makes no sense if the same power structure is already shaping everything. And this is where the Prime Directive shifts from being presented as a universal moral code into being portrayed as a justification device, something invoked to refuse help publicly while allowing manipulation privately. I'm calling out this exact pattern. The Federation claims non-intervention, but their influence is everywhere, just not in the way that empowers humans openly. So this is what the Prime Directive looks like in practice. Imagine a huge interstellar political body that controls borders, trade corridors, and contact rules, and that labels itself the guardian of free will. Now imagine it standing above Earth watching a civilization in crisis. The official posture is, we cannot interfere because your species must evolve on its own. But behind this posture, there's this constant manipulation of perception, the constant regulation of evidence that can surface, and the constant enforcement of secrecy. This is where the moral rule becomes a theater mask. It looks like ethics, it speaks like ethics, but it also functions like a gate. If you haven't seen my video on breaking the chains of gatekeeping, then please check it out. This gatekeeping doesn't happen only on Earth. It happens in all sorts of densities and in the astral. The Prime Directive is used as a gatekeeping instrument. It can be used to deny direct aid, deny open contact, deny real technological transfer, while still allowing plenty of time and plenty of interaction in the shadows through proxy groups, controlled narratives, and human institutions that can be influenced without ever landing on the White House lawn. There's also an important nuance from the older Taigetan transcript with Swaro 9. It says that the Prime Directive was created as part of the primordial rules when the Federation was formed, and it describes it as guidance meant to stop unfair interference with a less developed civilization, whether intentional or accidental. But then it adds a key point, that for them, it is a philosophy and not an unbreakable law. That means that it's flexible. It can be broken under full responsibility of those who decide to do so. That single idea changes everything because it means the Prime Directive is not a hard cosmic law. It's policy. it's interpretation, it's politics with moral language. So when you hear we cannot interfere, what you are really hearing is we choose not to interfere in that way, and we will justify that choice with our guiding doctrine. Do you see what's going on here? It even goes, like if we do interfere, we'll call it an exception, or we'll call it containment, or we'll call it correcting contamination, or we'll call it protection from an outside threat. The core text contains that exception language. It says contact with lesser races is not permitted unless they are threatened by an outside force. That sounds compassionate, but it also hands enormous power to whoever defines what an outside source is. And that counts as threat. And what counts as permitted action. And if you define threat narrowly, you can ignore slow harm. You can ignore psychological warfare, covert exploitation, and long-term societal capture. If you define threat broadly, you can justify interventions whenever it suits you. The rule is only as ethical as the hands that interpret it. And that is why at swaru.org repeatedly frames the Prime Directive as infamous. Not because non-interference is inherently evil, but because of how it is used around Earth as a rhetorical shield. One transcript openly accuses the Federation of negligence, permissiveness towards abusive agendas, all while claiming non-intervention and at the same time manipulating Earth constantly. This is why some factions of the Taigetans and why the Irma are part of the Federation but don't really agree with the Federation, because they see this manipulation going on. So they've distanced themselves from the Federation. So in summary, the Prime Directive is presented as a sacred promise to protect the developing civilization from the chaos of premature contact. It forbids technological uplifting, although all of the technology that's been introduced to Earth has been extraterrestrial technology. It's just been introduced in such a way that it looks like we're developing it. Okay? It forbids open proof. It forbids communication using advanced devices. And it demands that if the public begins to notice, those rumors must be suppressed and covered up. At the same time, I insist that Earth is not being left alone at all, and therefore the Prime Directive as applied to Earth becomes a contradiction. If a world is already entangled in outside agendas, then refusing open help in the name of non-interference is not neutrality, it's complicity. And there is a psychological twist here that I'm implying without needing to say it directly. If you keep a civilization from seeing you, you keep it from negotiating with you. If you keep it in a fog of plausible deniability, you keep it from making informed choices, okay? Informed decisions. So a doctrine that claims to protect free will can also be used to restrict the information needed for free will to be real. That is the heart of this message. The Prime Directive is not just about ethics, it's about control of the conversation. Who gets to speak? Who gets to show evidence? Who gets to define what is real? And who gets to decide when a planet is ready? This is why you see so many blurry videos of UAPs and UFOs that are being released by so-called whistleblowers, because it's against the Prime Directive to have any proof at all, not to mention that those spacecrafts are ours. The extraterrestrial ones are cloaked. Because of the Prime Directive, they have to stay cloaked. And that is why I often treat disclosure not as a gift, but that must be timed by authorities, but as a matter of sovereignty. Because if your reality is being managed through secrecy, then the first step towards genuine autonomy is seeing the truth of who is present and what rules are being used to justify their presence. So if you ask, what is the Prime Directive? The answer is not just one sentence. It's not simple. It's extremely complex, like everything in extraterrestrial politics. It's a doctrine of non-interference for pre-interstellar societies framed as sacred protection of cultural evolution. It's also a policy that forbids proof, forbids open technological contact, and explicitly supports suppression of rumors to preserve the intended development trajectory. This is why the extraterrestrials are not just going to come down and give you med beds. Anybody that believes that is going to be waiting an extremely long time because it's forbidden to do that. And finally, in the broader narrative, it is portrayed as a flexible philosophy that can be bent as an infamous justification used around Earth to excuse inaction publicly while maintaining influence privately. That is the whole shape of it. A promise, a prohibition, and a permission structure, all wrapped into one and applied to a planet that, from my point of view, is already deeply interfered with. Thank you for watching this message. Please support me on Patreon. I love you all. Stay free in your own mind, stay sovereign, and keep up the good work. All right. See ya.